Hi, my name is Lona Muthania Uchido, and I'm making it one of my life's mission to demystify the speech therapy field and to empower more parents on what they can start to do in order to optimize their child's communication outcomes. So whether you want your child to talk more or talk better, learn better, and overall optimize their potential. So stay tuned and feel free to send in any topics on speech and language development you'd like for me to tackle. Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Lona Muthamia Ochido, and in today's video I am going to tackle the topic of chewing and your child. There are many children walking around Nairobi, well, they're not literally walking around Nairobi, but that are not chewing. Your 3-year-old not chewing, your 2-year-old not chewing. They eat very limited foods. You can't actually take them out for long trips because you always have to, if you haven't prepared food for them, because they only just will eat the food that is mashed that comes from home. They're not having snacks. They're not, you can't just give them a banana to eat. They're not chewing anything. So what do? And it's, I know it's a very frustrating thing for any parent to have a child that doesn't chew. Well, if they're eating, that's fine. I guess if they're not eating, that's even more frustrating. But if they're not chewing, yes. And it's not just frustrating, it can also delay their language skills. So if your child's not chewing, I mean, it's no wonder I'm seeing a lot of these children that are not chewing because, as I've just said, it delays your language, your talking, because chewing uses the same muscles as talking. So for your child to actually have well-developed language or talking skills, and it actually makes sense, like everything is sequential, like one after the other. Like a child will be weaned at 6 months, because what milestone have they actually just achieved at about 6 months? Yeah, sitting. Yeah, so they've sat. So they've sat, it means they're now safe to actually eat. And then after they've started chewing, that is when you can actually start to expect first words. You'll never ever have a child that is saying their first words very clearly when they just have a gummy mouth, no teeth, haven't started chewing. Although actually with chewing you can chew without teeth. There are kids that are late bloomers. But anyway, so what do you do with a child that is not chewing solids? Well, so in Kenya, there is no clinical, like speech therapy clinic set up that is set up to take on children for like feeding therapy. Overseas, yes, there are feeding clinics that are attached to hospitals, maybe even private clinics, but in Kenya really there isn't any. So the best that I do, if a parent comes in with a child that isn't chewing, chances are they're also not talking, so we work on the not talking bit. But this is the advice that I normally give them. I'd say they need to model chewing. You know how when you feed a child, you say, swallow or eat, you're now saying chew. And you're not just saying chew, you're also modeling the action, like the mastication. So you're showing them how to do that. If you have anybody else that can serve as a model for your child, that person can be on a screen. I really don't advise screens, but if it's very motivating for your child, another baby just there chewing, taking a banana and chewing might just motivate your child to also want to chew. But it could also be siblings around that child. So it could be your partner, it could be somebody else in the home that is chewing. Say, look at how auntie is chewing, chew like auntie's there, auntie's chewing a gum perhaps, or whatever. So model the chewing action all the time, and that is the reinforcement that you're always giving your child. Chew your food and chew your food. Yeah. Something else that could be helpful is if you incrementally varied or made your child's food more, you added more texture to your child's food. So if you're always just giving mashed food, and mashed food can actually end up being a clutch for a child that is already developed the habit of not chewing, because it's just easy. You've trained the brain to know that I'm not expecting anything chewy, so all they do is just swallow. So you have to trick that brain sometimes so that it knows, oh, actually there could be some lumpy bits. And I know there's valid concern with parents saying that, if when we've tried to make the texture more chewy, my child is choking or is gagging, so don't just go from 0 to 10. So if you're used to giving your child very mashed food, maybe what you can do, you can start with something that is fork mashable. So you mash most of it, but still leave some a bit lumpy, but then make sure you bulk up with stew, so that they're not really going to gag. If you also add things like souring agents like lemon that will help your child. It will help curb that gag reflex so that they're not going to gag. And then again, you're reinforcing chew, 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 modeling. So and so is chewing, so and so is chewing. Can you chew like them? So you're always doing that. I mean, yes, the feeding time is going to be really long and stretched out, but you just have to do it until the new habit is put in place and your child is now chewing. Something else that you can do if your child is not chewing is, I've forgotten. I'm just gonna look. Let me just look. What is it? I don't think it's that. Let me see. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I have to write these notes down, guys, because sometimes it just disappears, you know. Anyway, so the last thing, which is really, really also important, is if you offer your child opportunity to experiment with food. Now, I know in African culture, you're not supposed to cheza na chakula, but that is exactly what I'm saying you do. Give your child opportunity on the high chair. Make sure that you've kitted them out so that they're not too messy. And again, if you are not averse to mess, then yeah, let them just be messy and have time with it. And put food there that they can just experiment with, put in their mouth, feel the texture of it, decide whether they want to chew it, if they want to spit it. But that in itself, just if your child has an aversion to new foods, that will just help curb that aversion. So I don't know if you've heard of child-led weaning. Maybe that is something you can Google on your own free time and look at what child-led weaning is. So it's about giving food to even like a 6-month-old that has never had solids before, giving them solid. So you're not mashing for them. What tends to happen if your child, during the weaning process, you give them a solid food in their mouth or a lumpy food in their mouth, they'll actually reflexively, they'll just start to chomp on it. They'll chomp on it. They won't suck on it, they'll chomp on it because they'll realize the texture has changed. The brain is really smart. Your child is in, you know, their brain is quite malleable. They are really in the critical brain development period, so they are very sharp and adaptable. So, but over time, if this child has just been given mash food, their brain has now specialized into knowing that all the food that goes into my mouth is actually food that I don't need to chew. So give them an opportunity to try that food when they've already eaten, or when there's not real pressure for them to actually take in the nutrition. Maybe they've already eaten, or it could be that they eat early with just what I've recommended, like making sure you vary the textures, add stew, whatever, but you're always upping the ante each time. And then during everybody else's meal time, so the parents, your meal time, you still have his plate for him and let him just experiment then. So try those tips. If your child is older, I mean, you could try chewing gum to see if they can be excited about that. Sometimes having a child see that they need to chew on a gum and then they'll blow a bubble, they probably won't be able to blow the bubble, but it might just be exciting for them. Or you could play with some snakes, you know, those jelly snakes, not real snakes, guys. So the jelly snakes, what are they called? What are they called? The ones you get like in the shop. They're called jelly snakes? I think they're called jelly snakes, but the sour ones. The sour ones are really exciting. You can play a game and you can bite off the head and you can chew, chew, chew. I mean, if you're not wanting to give your child sugars, that's fine. Yeah, this is something that if you're really, really desperate for ideas and you feel like you've tried everything, that is something else that you could try. But sour things will always just help trigger the swallow reflex, but so they won't gag, you know, they won't gag, and so and you're telling them chew, 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 and all that. So I hope that helps. I really hope that does. If you have any questions, just pop them into the comment. And if you would like to be notified when we post a new video, just subscribe and hit the notification bell. So that's it for today, and hope to catch you later. Thank you.